putting pressure on communities.
Well, I think you'll use a lot of
And
time.
then when
walking
we looked at
around here
sustainable aviation fuel as well, it
So
was crazy. It
finding
was like
where you're going
500
to
pounds
see
per ton
something
of carbon.
compared to
It's
the
the
other
most
venue.
expensive carbon reduction you can do. Offsetting, you can buy like
Yeah,
low,
yeah.
like if you buy
Yeah.
like a energy
Exactly where
offset, that is
yes, yes. Yeah.
it's like £5. If you buy like a good quality
Yeah.
one with like lots of co-benefits, it's like 15, 20.
Yeah,
But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
Ay, the pain of our lives. Transport is really, it's really tricky. Like that, and we haven't met, so. Introduction. Be able to come. Are there? Oh.
Yeah, don't put any pressure on us. That's fine. No pressure.
Finding your way up here, everyone. I know it's early, but you have chosen the best session, so we're all good. Yeah, well, let's get things underway. I think we're going to have a steady flow of people joining us a little late, perhaps. But yeah, good morning. Thanks for joining us here at Business Travel Show Europe 2022. It's great to be back here again. My name's Andy Hoskins. I'm editor of BTN Europe, Business Travel News Europe, which is part of the BTN group that organises this show, and it's a pleasure to be moderating this session this morning. Some quick housekeeping. If any of you were here yesterday for the Hosted By conference, you'll know we use the Swap Card app for polling. So if you could take a couple of moments to download that. We do have a virtual audience joining us today as well, and they are able to ask questions via the Swap Card app, and you're welcome to as well, but we would also encourage you to simply put your hand up in the air. And we'll get underway with the poll in a moment. But in the meantime, let me introduce our wonderful panel who, between them, represent 3 companies at quite different stages of your sustainable business travel journeys, I suppose. Here we have, sorry, I'll refer to my paper to get your job title spot on. Ruth Andrade, Strategy Lead for Earth Care at cosmetics company Lushs, with probably the best job title on the panel, I'm afraid. Her colleague David Blackhurst-Evans, Global Travel Manager at Lushs. And next we have Merete Minette, Group Travel Manager at engineering company FLD Smith, based in Denmark.
Yeah, cool.
And lastly, Yvonne Moyer, who oversees the Global Travel Programme as Transformation Director at Randstad, the Netherlands headquartered consulting firm. All good? Are we all good so far? Excellent. Okay. Well, sustainability, big topic for the last, I don't know, going back some years now. And as the pandemic unfolded and business travel was sort of grinded back into action, it was quickly apparent that it's going to become a fundamental part of business travel going forward. And some companies are only sort of turning attention to it now. Others have been doing it for some years, which is why we have David and Ruth here from Lushs, for whom it is fairly well embedded. I guess is the best way to describe it. But let's start by having the first poll, please. If you can turn to your phones and if you're on Swapcard. So just to sort of gauge where we all are. The question is, how advanced are your company's efforts to reduce its environmental impact from business travel? And the options are non-existent, don't be embarrassed, embryonic, developing, well-embedded, advanced, or best in class. And while we get some votes coming in, I'm going to pose that question to Ruth and David, first of all. So don't be afraid to blow your own trumpet if you feel you are best in class. What would you say out of those options? I think you can see them now.
I don't know. I think for me, best in class at the moment, if you have a very well-established, well underway to decarbonization travel policy. I think I'd say we're embedded. I also see that it's not, it's not such a smooth journey, and there are many ups and downs, and we've had radical policies that then we became a little bit less radical, and I think it's like a journey of understanding as well, but I'd say embedded.
Okay, are you going to agree with that, David? Are you going?
Yeah, it's something that is spread across our business. It's not just within travel. It's well and truly looked in every area of our business, and it has been kind of since day one. Mm-hmm. Like Ruth says, we go up and down. We try and enforce it quite radically, and then we have to kind of take the nicer approach to things. But yeah, I would agree.
Okay. Merete, do you want to describe very briefly where you're coming at this from?
Yeah, so if for our company, we have signed up to the science-based target for the entire company. So we are really into Mission Zero, we call it, for 2030. So it's a really huge program that we are running, but for us, it's very much towards our customers. So for our business travel, it is kind of non-existing.
So the nature of your business means what your scope 3 emissions, business travel, are
0.1%.
0.1.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's that is a small amount, but
so
you will be targeted at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yvonne.
Super interesting. For us, scope 3 is 90%. So
Yeah,
that's
same.
the absolute opposite. So we have also.
Sorry, can you hear Yvonne?
Nope.
Yeah, you're okay in the front row.
Okay, yeah, here. So for us, it's the complete opposite. We're at 90% in scope 3 because we're not producing anything. So we're a professional services company, so completely opposite spectrum. Whilst business travel in scope 3 is, half of it, we have the supplier-related stuff. So for us, it's really just the value chain of our suppliers that we're also looking after. But we also have pledged net zero in SBTI and also going carbon neutral then in 2050. So.
Okay, thank you. So just looking at those poll results, we've got a bit of a spread, and no one's been bold enough to claim they are best in class. Not surprisingly, perhaps, but maybe heading towards that are Lushs. So let's spend, 15, 20 minutes talking about your program specifically, because there are a few like it. Do you want to explain, Ruth, I guess because you work across the whole company, how sustainability is embedded within Lushs, and a little bit about the company as well?
Sure. We are a cosmetics manufacturer, and we have an advantage that we have quite a lot of vertical integration. So we source materials in direct relationship with customers. We have our own manufacturing units spread around the world to reduce logistics and supply chains. And our biggest manufacturing unit, no, it's in North America, but in Europe, it's in the UK, in Poole. And we have shops in about 45 countries. And I think we say that like our purpose is to leave the world lusher than we found it. So how can we really create a business that we could answer, you know, would the earth be better if Lush didn't exist? And we would like to say no, like we're actually making an active impact to help restore ecosystems and raise awareness around environmental issues. And within that scenario, we have actually, we're just relaunching our environmental strategy, and we're calling it the to-do list for climate and nature, because we really want to make it action-based and based on a to-do list rather than, you know, big long-term commitments. And as part of that to-do list is transport is one of the 5 pillars. And that pillar is to radically reduce our transport emissions. And we use radically reduce transport emissions because we know by 2030 it's going to be very difficult to go to like real zero when it comes to transport. But yeah, when it comes to energy, then we are really aiming for real zero rather than net zero. But for transport, we rely on a whole ecosystem of innovation that needs to scale in the next few years for us to also achieve our targets. So yeah, but for now we're re-looking at our whole policy and making it a little bit more, a little bit more radical. And we have been doing this already for, I'd say, when did we start? 2008, 2009, we started implementing some of our travel policies surrounding rail, especially, and business travel.
Okay, so how does the sustainability culture within Lush, how does that filter down to your travel program? I'm not sure if you want to take that one, David.
Yeah, so we, I don't know if strict is the right word, maybe. We have some strict guidelines in our travel policy, which is seen across the global business. So we actually, up until 2018, we actually had a no-fly policy in the UK, and that goes over to France as well. But when the company grew and we started doing a bit more of getting all of our teams together for our events and our training sessions, we then looked at it from a holistic welfare and actually reduced that down to 8 hours. So in essence, if a travel can be done in 8 hours door to door by train, then flight is not an option. And we deal directly with our travellers, so me and my team will educate our travellers every time they would like to try and book flights, either within the UK or those short distances, and give them those train options, go through the whole process of what it's like. When you look at it in hours, when you get to an airport, when you check in, once you go through security, get on your flight, then do it all the other side, then get to where you're going, most of the time the train is either the same time or actually not that much different. So to us, train is the best way for us to go. And we work on a public transport first basis, so we try not to use hire vehicles, people using their own vehicles, plenty of public transport out there, so those are always our first options.
Okay, and that previous no-fly policy, what was it that changed? That sort of you went back on that? Was it just the sheer volume of the growing business? Yeah,
the volume of the business. So Lush was made and created in Poole. So if we've got staff coming down from our Scotland stores, it's on a train, it's 10, 11 hours. Now, to get them down to Poole, get them to be able to be at their best and get the most from their time down here, we don't want them coming down and being exhausted or doing night trains. So then that's then where that whole, because it was sort of 2 to 3 times a year we were trying to get them to do that, that's then when we said actually we need to look at this and review it, because obviously the holistic welfare of our our staff is paramount. So there are ways that we could make that better.
No, I just want to say that, yeah, people had to travel for 13 hours on the train, and there was, you know, like I think also the behavioral change that needs to happen, and to have everyone playing, you know, playing ball is like a lot of awareness as well. And I think some of the things that we did is actually actively campaigning for trains and bringing the impact of flying and the impact of a third runway in Heathrow, and how short flights are so much more impactful than long per mile, right? Than a long haul flight, and like that level of education, so people feel comfortable in having these more radical policies. But I think we went a little bit too radical.
And does that filter? I mean, you mentioned France there as well. That's heavily domestic rail as well, is it?
Yeah, the Eurostar option is there, so that's.
Yeah, but also within France and within Germany, like Germany also 100% rail travel, like no flight policy within Germany is allowed. Yeah.
And in fact, I think when you spoke to a colleague of mine a few months ago, I think you travelled to Berlin by train.
Yeah, I only do trains. Yeah. And David, maybe you also, I think one important thing is like usually trains more expensive than planes. Yes. But at Lush, like we are, like, do you feel you can? Yeah.
Yeah, we do get a lot of people. Obviously, they're looking at their budgets and trying to save money, and will come to us and say, well, we could get a flight for £50, £60, but we're asking them to get a £200 train. Now, the environmental impact is far more important to us than the cost. Yes, we'd love the cost of rail to come down, but that environmental impact is what comes first.
And then, and I think we're also encouraging long journeys. So my team, of course, is the environmental team, so we only take trains. And then I flew I did a lot of work in Germany, and I flew during the pandemic when it was impossible to cross multiple countries because of COVID. But mostly, and I just went to Germany a few weeks ago. I'm going again in July, and I already have my train travel booked. It's 9 hours, like London to Berlin is 9 hours and 9 minutes without hassle, in super cool, comfortable, fast trains. Like, you know, why fly and have to queue at it's just not worth it. Like when you think about, extinction level event for an additional 2 hours on the train, or do I fly? You know, I think we need to start really thinking about the future and, you know, what we're actually doing to the planet when we make those decisions, especially when we're talking about 1, 2, 3 extra hours. Like, what's 1, 2, 3 extra hours for not going to mass extinction, or, you know, all the biodiversity laws that's happening?
So how do you educate travellers to this policy, especially some who might have moved to Lush from companies with very different travel programs?
So we do one-on-ones, or like, when I say like one-on-ones, it could just be with one other person or with a group of people when they are new to the business. And yes, there are some raised eyebrows when we do go through our travel policy, but we also explain the reasons why we have those policies in place and why they mirror the ethics of our business. So kind of we get them from day one. So with our recruitment team, if they know that travel is going to be part of anyone's role, then they'll get in contact with us and we do those sessions. We also have an intranet site, so it has all of our policies on there, so they're always guided there, and we do sort of push them out kind of every few months just to kind of remind people that these are our policies. And because really all the travel should come through us, but we do see a leakage of people booking their own, so it's trying to capture those people that are booking their own and not necessarily booking what we would book. So that's the re-education, but it's also then when they come to us for their to book their travel. So for instance, I actually had one last week. Someone wanted to fly from Manchester down to Bournemouth, and they claimed it was for fatigue. But actually, when we sat down and went through, as I said moments ago, with the whole getting to Manchester Airport, the whole check-in process, and we know how airports are at the moment, that whole process, and then getting to actually Southampton, then hopping on a train and getting down to Bournemouth. I mean, Manchester, there's a direct train from Manchester down to Bournemouth. Cut it all out. Fatigue, there's no, like, we've done it just by rail, so there was absolutely no need for a flight.
So do you find yourself intervening quite a lot like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I say. Yeah.
So how are you viewed as a travel department within the company?
So it is hard. Sometimes we get called business blockers, but business blockers isn't the right phrase. It's trying to push, well, it's trying to, as you say, educate our travellers to travelling in a way that is in line with our business without forcing it. So we don't actually like using the words policies and things like that. We call them guidelines, just to kind of fluff them up a little bit and make them a bit more friendlier. And we do find, like, by doing that, and actually we went through our whole policy last year, and again, we made it a bit more friendly, not the kind of the do's, the don'ts. It's kind of, this is how we travel, this is why we do it, and this is our guidance on how to do it. So that's where we're always changing as well, because we need to always have a look at our policies. Are they delivering it? If they're not, why? And then that's why we kind of, all the information stayed in there, we just changed the wording in there last year.
And also, again, back to, integrity. Like, I think if you decide to take a job with Lush, you already know, that you're coming to a company that is really trying to make a difference and actively playing in the space. And I think that sense that, wow, they're talking about it, but they're doing something completely different behind the scenes is also detrimental to the culture. So I think, like, creating a culture where we are doing what we're saying, and we are like really engaging everyone and making sure that everyone can make a contribution, that kind of culture that then gets created is really important. And like in two weeks' time, we're doing a big presentation to leadership, about 45 people, on our travel impact, and then really remaking some commitments and getting more funding for supporting some initiatives. And that is an educational part. It's like, why does this matter? Why is this important? And depersonalizing it from, it's not like the travel team enforcing these guidelines at a personal level, it's actually you contributing to the bigger impact that we're trying to have on society. So I think it's always linking that personal behavior to this bigger context that we're inserted in, and like how radical we need to be at this time.
Okay, and I know you don't like to use the word policy, but do you have any particular policies around hotels and accommodation?
So hotels, so we're actually trying to, especially kind of coming out of COVID and re-looking at how we used to travel as a business, we're trying to get out of the whole one-night stay culture. Because we were finding that people, I'll just use London for example, so travellers would travel up to London at 11, 12, 1 o'clock on their first day and come back similar times the day after. Now we can talk to our travellers and be like, do your meetings need to be spread over 2 days? Can they not be shifted into 1 day? Or can part of it be virtual and part of it be in person? Because we are seeing that the virtual culture, now people have had that in-person time again, they're wanting that a lot more. But it's understanding why they need to have it more. Some of them do. Some of the projects they're going on, it's just better to do it in person. But it's looking at what are those requests that are coming through? What are the timings looking like? And as we say, does that need a one-night stay in a hotel? Because you're adding in everything that goes with the hotel, the cost and everything, like all of those added little bits, and it's like it's not really needed most of the time.
And also to add that now a lot of the booking sites are beginning to show hotel, like the sustainability rating for hotels, and which hotel have a better practice. And we're also talking to our travel software company, like how do we embed more that information at the time of booking? Because I think that's essential, and it will create some behavioral change if we have that information at the time of booking. Yeah.
So I guess with rail travel, there there are few options, but with accommodation you can compare carbon footprint of hotels, which is quite difficult to measure, and there aren't many standards. I guess different suppliers have their own schemes and standards, but I guess that's an evolving area at the moment. But you mentioned virtual technology. Obviously, we've all got used to that over the last couple of years. But you say people are quite happy to ditch that now and get back travelling. But so how do you manage that return to travel to your advantage with your sustainability goals?
I mean, it took a while. I would say only up until kind of this year, people were still quite hesitant in travelling. And then we saw a couple of team meetings happen at the beginning of the year, which again, and quite understandably, there was a lot of cautious around travelling, groups getting together. So that's why they did it in individual team meetings. It was their choice if they came, and actually some of them were also done virtually. So if they didn't want to be there in person, it could be done virtually. So we are seeing a lot of that kind of dual meetings happening. But now that they've kind of had the bite of being back in, even getting back into the offices, they're now starting to like it again. That remote working, either on their own or like even with me, both me and my husband work at home, but he's upstairs, I'm downstairs, and we don't see each other for 8 hours. So kind of you're still on your own in a way. So they're now starting to like getting together. But their teams are still very cautious in the way of how we travel as well, because they don't want their teams just travelling just because they want a day with the team if they've got to travel 2-3 hours to get there. So actually what we are doing is working in the fact that the managers of the teams are already changing their mindsets, especially since COVID, is travel necessary? Do we need everyone together so frequently, or do we do it every other month or every 3 months? So we are starting to see those trends come in already.
And also on a bigger scale, we used to have these mega global events bringing together everyone from the business, and we have reassessed all of those strategies, and also for sustainability reasons and cost reasons, because I also think travel it has already become more expensive, and is just going to become more expensive as we start, integrating the cost of carbon. But yeah, so we're also changing the strategy like for good, and I think COVID created that opportunity for everyone to review those strategies. So even though people are coming back together, is nowhere at the levels that there used to be before pandemic, like no way. And we're starting with like local events and doing global events once every 3 years. So we are taking into account that we have this new normal, and using that to try and make sure that it can meet sustainability goals, as well as being more cost effective and being safe for people.
Okay, just a couple more questions from me before we move to Yvonne and Marita, waiting patiently on the end then. And if you have any questions, do pop your hand up at any moment. I'll try and scan the room every now and then. But tell us about Electra.
Electra. So literally just before the pandemic, we bought our very own electric bus. So it's just sort of like a shuttle bus size. So Poole was made and founded in Lushs was made and founded in Poole. So we've got our manufacturing sites, and then we've also got our couple of head office sites. So they're quite a journey in between, and we were doing quite a lot of taxi journeys just to and from. So when we now look at it as our campus, so we said, what can we do in line of our sustainability impact to reduce those taxes?
By the way, we had tried bikes as well.
Yes.
Low adoption.
So yeah, we went shopping and found a electric bus. And so we thought, let's see how it goes, how it works. So actually it now works as a park and ride service to get staff in to work. So we're reducing the amount of vehicles that are coming into the city centres. And it's quite nice because where the offices are and where the manufacturing sites are, both have quite big residential communities around them. So we find that live over here but work over here, so actually the park and ride service works really well. It then has a little break for a couple of hours charge, and then it will start a loop service in the midday. So then hopefully then people can get on the bus in the morning, have their meetings in the morning, and then travel back to the office or to the manufacturing sites on the loop service. But we have also used it for team get-togethers. So if they're going out to the local area, then they'll hop on Electra and she will take them around.
And we had like 500, how many people used it last month?
Last month was 534
Yeah.
uses.
Proving more
Really
popular than the
reduced.
bikes then.
Yeah.
A little bit more popular than the bikes. And way better than taxis as well.
We've got a question.
Yes, hello, I'm Pernilla from the EIB in Luxembourg. I have a question about how you handle the naughty travelers. So you say that some people actually don't go through you, but they buy what they shouldn't buy. How do you handle that? Because that's a real issue for us.
So we work very closely with our accounts teams, and it's actually something that we had a very big discussion on last week, is kind of whose responsibility does it lie with to change the mindset and inform those, because really company cards shouldn't be used for travel, neither should personal cards. Me and my team, we run a 24-hour service that works alongside our TMC, which works very nicely. So there is no need for them to be using their own cards. So we're actually doing it as a dual approach. So they're actually informing me of, I'm getting a report of what has gone on to cards of that month, and then we'll tackle them from both ends.
And it's usually like a conversation, you know, it's also, and what we see a lot, like I have two examples of people coming from Scotland who paid for their own flights because they wanted to fly and didn't want to take the train. And with Lush, like, sorry, you can't, you know, you're not gonna book a flight from Glasgow to London. So they personally paid for their flights. Yeah, that happened a couple of times.
Yeah.
So I think we're quite like strict, but I think it's like it's that intelligence around the business and then conversation. Like we're like Lush. It's we also want to create autonomy. People can book their own travel. Like there is this work towards autonomy. So you also need to do education, but carrot and stick. You know, a little bit of education and a little bit of like, oh, can we have a chat? Yeah, but it's tricky.
Yeah,
That's
and I
the
will
trickiest
say
part.
the flights is very rare, and as Ruth said, it's like it would never be recharged because
Yeah,
there's not a need, and dare I say, there's a reason why they've not booked it for us.
yeah.
But we find there's the trains and the additional taxis that, especially those taxi journeys that aren't necessarily needed, especially sort of in London when we've got the underground and things like that. So those are the leakages that we're seeing coming through.
And also because one company that we're not going to name from the gig economy that we didn't use at Lush due to their human rights policies, like a lot of people will book them, you know, on expenses cards because they would not be able to book them through Lush. Yeah, but now I think they're better.
So we're kind of going we're going the little stricter route.
I can't imagine who you're talking about. Right, and Yvonne, thank you very much for
There's a question.
waiting
yeah.
patiently. Oh, okay. Squeeze another one in.
Hello, it's Alexandra, also from Luxembourg, European Stability Mechanism. And I wanted to come back to what you said about quarantine stick. Do you think it can work without a really strict policy, something that is implemented in your company? Because I understand the concept of the carrot and the stick, but somehow it didn't work for us. We also tried several times. And what we see as a pattern of our travelers is that it's nice to talk to them, to educate, but if you want them to change their mindset, there must be something really tangible for them to feel, and the example must come from the top. Because like starting
Yeah.
doesn't work. We are doing a lot of efforts trying to convince, to educate, but then you hit the wall at some point, and if you see that you don't get any support from the top, of course, the pressure goes
Yeah.
down, and
And so I'll just address two things, because we also didn't talk about the carbon tax. So we tried a carbon tax for 10 years, and we put the cost of carbon at 50 pounds per ton, which, we started this when I think for offsetting it was like 2 pounds per ton, and we were charging ourselves 50 pounds per ton, but then using that to fund activism. So we fund a lot of activism in the UK, like third runway at Heathrow activism, or no road building, or pro public transport, and we thought. And that had the opposite effect, because then it washed the guilt of people in flying, and we're like, wow, this is not working. Like, this is really not working. So now we are reviewing and thinking, what is, the stick that maybe goes back to people's budget, and we are putting the actual cost of carbon, like an internal cost of carbon, on people's budgets. We're discussing this as well, but. What is the right approach? And from the top, I think we're lucky that like our founders cycle to work. They, when they bought a car, it was a Tesla. Like, there is that they never fly. Like, they rarely travel, and very judgmental. Like, Mark is so judgmental of flying. Like, so I think we have that support, but I agree with you, especially if the people that are breaking the rules are leadership, then this makes it really hard to do behavioral change, if you don't have that example. But we are, I think there have been some really interesting cases of implementing an internal cost of carbon and adding that. And it's not offsetting, it's really an internal cost of carbon added to travel back to the team's budgets. Yeah, I think that's the next thing that we've been starting to discuss. Yeah.
I'm just going to come back to you in 5 minutes. Marita, Yvonne, I want to get your impressions of Lushs' travel program there. I mean, you said 0.01 of your overall carbon emissions are from business travel.
Yes.
So are you sitting quietly in the corner, sort of getting ready for when someone starts pointing the finger?
Yeah, but you have your travelers coming up and saying, I want to fly greener than the guy did yesterday. So the travelers are kind of asking for a program. They're asking for, so why is it I have to fly with the stopover just because it's cheapest? So is my program now changing from being a savings-related program and going into be a sustainable program, because I cannot do it for free, right? So the travelers are kind of asking for it now. So I have to address the sustainability department, saying, I'm also here, please help. So that's where I am right now, that we have a huge program in place directed to our customers, but we're kind of forgetting the part back home. So
Are you measuring your carbon impact from travel?
Yeah. Yes.
And,
and it's in our annual reports and everything. So.
Yeah. Okay. And Yvonne?
Yeah, we also do that, but we just did the pledge end of last year, so we're still still doing some data crunching and getting the baseline right. And so we are part of that net zero team as a building block, which is really important. And so with scope 3, but also in my area is fleet in scope 1. So, which is kind of we have total support there from an investment perspective to have an electronic fleet. So we're already starting in the Netherlands, and then we're next in Germany and I think in Belgium. So that's moving forward with a good investment commitment, because there's money behind, expensive. Right? So it's not as easy as just move your fleet to an electronic fleet. It's not that. But from a business travel perspective, I think for me it's the baseline data, so we need to get that right, but also it's the understanding in the company. So when I first was engaged in that net zero team, and I mean, God bless my sustainability colleagues, but they were like, yeah, Yvonne, let's just change the policy and then we're done. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you wish. Because it's not that the policy doesn't have already green elements in there. It's really what you guys already discussed. It's on how do we follow up, how do we do the right things, how do we lead by example. So it's rather at the moment, I really liked what you said. It's making the travel team not responsible for doing or policing doing the right or wrong thing. It's making it part of their DNA to when you travel, you want to do the right thing. So that's where we are at the moment. So it's really thinking about what can we also do over and above with partners and suppliers, because that's very impactful for us as well. So the minute a partner of us is doing something, it's good for us too. But also a lot of education. Can we get, I don't know, better in, paperless, more digital, also things like that. It's going a little bit beyond the thing of air versus train. Of course, that's the thing, but it is also really creatively, how can we do that? How can we educate in, the easy things, as in pack lighter, choose local options, do this and that. So there is a lot of engagement and communication campaigns around that too. So I get what you're saying, that you're in contact with these, but also again, I very rarely talk to travelers that purposely want to do the wrong thing. Yes, you have them. Yes, they want to hop on a flight from, I don't know, Frankfurt to Berlin, or from Frankfurt to Amsterdam. Yeah, it's and also there have been cases, I've been flying that route too, to Amsterdam, but at the time, right now, nobody would get me onto a plane, right, for different reasons. But so we're also thinking about these 6-8 hours journeys to implement that. But again, it's a nice dream to have, to just change the policy. It's not as easy as this. It's again, for them, change the policy and everything will be green. No, that's greenwashing, because it's not. So.
Marita, have you looked previously at indirect versus direct flights? Is that something you've looked at that as well, Yvonne?
Yeah,
and I guess you've got to weigh up the cost versus productivity and sustainability. And have you changed policies around that?
No, we have not adjusted the policy yet, but we are looking into all different kinds of options. So we already reduced and removed business class travel, so even our top management cannot travel on business class. So that's of course already gave us a huge impact on our CO2 emissions. So we are looking into traveling in the right way, and again also looking into timing and all of that. But we travel out of Copenhagen, you always have to travel with a stopover to somewhere, almost, because there's no direct flights to within Europe, but that's it. And as we work all around the world, and in South America, Africa and Asia, we travel long hauls a lot, and it's actually most of our trips. So looking into total cost of trip and the distances as well. So every little part you have to look at.
And did you?
Yeah, no, that's a very low-hanging fruit. That no business class as well. Like I think at Lush we don't, like, no one flies business class. I think we've always had that policy, but I actually think it's a very, very low-hanging fruit to reduce carbon from travel, like, very quickly.
Changing cabin class.
Yeah, changing cabin class. Yeah, no business class.
Some people aren't going to like that, are they?
No. Again, folks, I think it's important, the education and the culture part, and like anchoring this on what's happening, like what's the macro context, what's actually, having that direct experience. And I think this is something we've done at Lush very successfully. It's like we bring the activists to come and talk to people. Like we are at the forefront of the situation, talking to people that are being impacted by extreme weather events, bringing the elements of climate justice. I think when it makes you feel part of this bigger community and you can see the direct impacts of our actions, it's a little bit easier to then do the behavioral change, right? Because it's not a policy because someone somewhere in the office said, oh, you shouldn't fly business class. It's like, look, let's really look deeply and get experience. But it's also for us, so people traveling out in the world, meeting the customers and saying, we designed this great product for you and it's like this, so now you're completely sustainable, and then I go back on business class and see you later. Yeah. And so we need to have the full picture, and everything needs to be linked together.
Do you, let's talk about RFPs, supplier RFPs. How do you factor in sustainability? Is that getting a bigger weighting now?
Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm putting sustainability questions in for the hotels and everything, so I can market in my online booking tool with a green leaf or whatever I want to market with. But so we are asking. It's difficult, But as you said, your partners that you choose, they have to also provide something.
And at Lush, I mean, I don't know if you have if you go out with RFPs for airlines, because you probably don't have much air travel. But would you look at where there's competition on a route? Would you look at the airline with the newest fleet, or would you sort of go into that granular detail?
So this is something that we are looking into in our TMC, because there are systems out there where at booking time you can see which. So you've got a list of flights, and it will give you the carbon of every single one of those flights. So then you can start looking at, so is the cheapest the less carbon, or is it the not necessarily the most expensive, is the most carbon? But those are the areas that we are now looking into, is how we can see the carbon at booking. So then that's then where we can use our judgment, but then also the travellers can see it because they've got their own booking function tool as well.
But we haven't put policy around that yet.
No.
Okay.
Also, and again, once more, we need that information at point of booking, right? So, like, I think you even have a meeting today about that with our supplier. Yeah, I go to. Can I say names?
Yeah.
Well, I go every time I'm booking something, I go to Skyscanner, because they are, they're really good at showing the. And I have I have in my head, like, what's the ratio that I'm willing to pay, because but often they're not even the most expensive flights, but it's really good to see. And I think having that, and as I said before, like some hotel bookings as well. So like me and my team, because of course we're the sustainability team, I think we're quite focused on this, but I think we need to discuss, like, what is the overall policy as that information becomes more available. Yeah. Does anyone here have that policy of, like, do you have that policy of if it's up to 20% less, we will?
Okay.
Do you have a policy?
No,
around it?
we haven't put labels on it yet, right?
Right.
So like it's 20%,
Like a threshold,
10,
yeah.
No, we didn't do that yet, but I guess that's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be interesting if anyone here has a policy like that to share, and then yeah.
I want to talk about offsetting and sustainable aviation fuel briefly.
Ah.
There is a specific session on SAF tomorrow if you want to attend that one. And in fact, could we have the second poll up, please? So just to find out where we are with offsetting. And maybe in the meantime, we'll come back to that question over there. And if you, was it yourself that had a question? Could you make it about offsetting, please?
Oh,
do you
yeah.
No, you sorted. One back here.
Hi, I'm Natalie from ANA. My question was related to the SAF partnership programs that the airline or the TMC might be offering, and your view and how you approach that, if you know what I'm talking about, hopefully.
We leave all the fire to Ruth now.
No. Oh. Like with my activist hat, I don't know. We started looking to this with Good Shipping. I don't know if anyone here knows Good Shipping. They're doing really great work with the shipping industry on getting, in the Netherlands actually, getting freight forwarders and ship owners to bunker fuel made from waste oil. And they're specifically focusing on waste oil and agricultural waste, so fuel from agricultural waste. And that was our first incursion into this area of, we've always been very, very against and campaigning against biofuels in general because of the impact on communities and ecosystems, especially palm oil. And if you're using virgin oil for biofuels, that's extremely problematic, also from a climate justice perspective. But Good Shipping, we found a good transitional approach where they're super, super committed to very low carbon fuels and super, super committed to only using wastes. And then we played with that for a year. So we calculated how much fuel our sea freight used, and then we partner with them to bunker the same amount of fuel on our behalf. So mass balance rather than direct fuel use. And then we're also talking to our distributors here in the UK, and we're also talking about SAF. And we're right in the middle of that discussion right now, because it's like, it's greenwashing, most of it. So, but some of it is like really interesting and new technology, like algal fuel or from especially agricultural waste and oil waste. But it's like because part of it is good, if we support this industry, are we also helping to scale the biggest part of it, which is bad? So I think we're right in the middle of the conversation. Like, is there a right partner there for us to connect with that can guarantee a lot of integrity? But yeah, are we helping promote something that ultimately is greenwashing?
Okay, so I can imagine your stance on offsetting then.
Oh yes, yeah, we have a no offset policy. Like
Okay.
really,
And just looking at, I can't actually read that. But so we're at 30%. We don't use offsetting because there's no specific sustainability program. 10% we don't use it because we don't think it's effective. 50% is one component of our environmental sustainability program, which I guess is probably what I'd have expected.
and to say it's also a lie that we don't do any offsetting. We do have offsetting when it already comes embedded. So I don't know, we buy our gas from Ecotricity, and that gas already comes with offsets. In Germany, we buy our energy from Green Planet Energy, and that gas comes, already. In Germany, we have DHL, and the DHL distribution system already has the offset. So it creeps in through this supply partnerships, but we as Lush, we have a policy to not buy offset, and all the money that we would use in offset, not all the money, but we created a budget for insetting, which is actually working in deep partnership with the suppliers for them to reduce their carbon emissions. And we do have the aims of making like our supply chain carbon positive, but through insetting, through really working with suppliers rather than just buying offsets from projects that we're not connected with.
So how do you ensure they're putting that to the correct use or the use you want it to go to?
Oh, it's a proper partnership. So we usually, because a lot of it has to do with nature-based solutions, so transitioning to regenerative agriculture or replacing fuels or how they are, some people are producing essential oils using gas or using wood that there is a risk of deforestation. So how do we work with them to pay for some of those improvements? But it's like us, we are project managing that together with the supplier. Yeah, which gives us a little bit more control than, and there are good offsetting programs, but again, it's like, do we want to promote this as a strategy? Because it's the strategy that, it's the one that is the easiest and the cheapest, right? It's really cheap to do offsetting compared to let's insulate our factories or put heat pumps for warehouse heating. So I think it's, again, it's what do we really want? What are the real solutions that we need to be pushing here? And then what are the transitional things like sustainable aviation fuel or HVOs, like offsetting? But we have a risk of being stuck in the transitional strategies rather than pushing for where we need to go. So that's why I think we are cautious in promoting these transitional strategies too much. Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask yourselves now, Marita, Yvonne, what your companies do in terms of SAF and/or offsetting?
Yeah, so we are not allowed to offset anything. We need to change behavior and products, and just like you guys. So SAF, no, we're not enrolling into any programs as it is right now. And again, because they're not really flying on SAF, so it's just, as you said, greenwashing. So that's where we are right now.
It's just another offset.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we share all the same views. So I do really like the engagement around SAF. Like you're saying, it's the good, the bad, the ugly, and you want to be part of the good. But the question is, what's the rest impacting? And that's for us at the moment. We're happy to hear all about it, but we think it's greenwashing at the time. So I think from an aviation perspective, different things need to happen other than that little portion of SAF. And as in offsetting, we are also offsetting when it comes with a partner. Like you said, with the energy, we're doing the same, or with if a partner, as in, for example, Deutsche Bahn, does do the offsetting already, so we're doing this. So because we are net zero, so we are on that strict reduction targets, but the little we have, we want to get neutral, but we try to do that via, indirect offsetting. So it's not that we say we're not changing our behavior and save a tree. So that's not what we're doing. So we don't believe that this is the right thing to do.
So if these are transitional strategies, then what is? I won't ask what the answer is, but what can you do? Is it simply changing behavior within your own company? Is that where it's got to start?
I think it's like behavior change. I was talking to a climate scientist that works a lot with behavior change, and he gave me a little framework that I really liked. It's like avoid, shift, and improve. So avoid is like, it's all the behavioral change stuff, right? So do you really need to fly, or can you do video calls, and do we need an extra overnight and things like this? Then shift is like, instead of taking the plane, let's take the train, like where let's get the electric bus instead of getting a normal taxi, let's get an electric vehicle and all of that. And the shift also relies on a lot of infrastructure. So let's shift from dirty shipping fuel to hydrogen fuel. But the hydrogen ships, like we're also talking to early adopters and partners. It's like the partner we're talking to, it's 2026. So a lot of those have medium-term to long-term requirements. But I think we need to be partnering and supporting these early adopters and supporting government in building this infrastructure. So I think also us as business, we also have that kind of civil responsibility of trying to vote for the right government, push the government towards the right policies, and that shift will require infrastructure and transport. It will take time. It requires government policy and infrastructure. So how as business can we push that beyond behavioral change? And improve, it is, supporting technology. So what we were saying before, these apps that are helping making logistics more efficient, is giving information at the point of booking. It is even using artificial intelligence to suggest, different routes that you can take and things like that. So I think like supporting that ecosystem through our purchasing and through our political voices, I think is really crucial now to move beyond transition. Yeah.
We had, was anyone at the Hosted By conference yesterday afternoon? Okay. We had just trying to see who it is. There was a heresy session, so it's one we have every year. We have a few buyers sort of come up with something slightly radical, and one of them said, we're talking about sustainability too much, and their theory was that it should all be down to government. We should just leave government to develop it. So is that, what do you make of that?
I think it's a system, right? And it's neither government nor like the problem that I sense, and I think this is why we haven't made a lot of progress, and that's why COPs also, we haven't made a lot of progress at COPs, is like between consumers, government, and businesses, we keep saying, oh, the government should be doing it, or we are going to change if there is consumer demand for it. And then the consumer is saying, oh, I'll change my behavior if the companies make sustainability cheaper, or if the governments, are not taxing this. And then the government say, oh, we need, we are on a 4-year mandate or term, so we need businesses to want it, and then we will move. And then we've just been wasting our time for the last few decades. So I think it's like acknowledging what is the role that we each play, and how can we all influence each other, right? So how can we, I agree, especially transport, we need serious infrastructure investment, and we're not going to decarbonize transport without major investment that needs to come from government, but in partnership with the private sector, right? And then same thing, private sector influencing consumers and our own staff, but also lobbying for the right things from government, and civil society, strengthening civil society doing their role. So I think we need to stop saying, oh, it's only the government, or it's only businesses, or it's only consumer, and work like a system. Yeah.
Completely agree.
Yeah. Okay. But I think we've got about 5 minutes left. Do we have any more questions that you want to ask our panel here in our last few minutes? No? Okay, we got one there.
Hello, Marijke Poppink here. I was just curious, do you see a trend or a difference in type of employees, age, with their behavior, and if it's more difficult to get them on board? Or do you also see bottom-up activities that try to change your company?
Yeah, for me, I can say that we are really trying to get young engineers in, and they are requesting that we have a program in place. They are requesting a policy to adhere to, and so when they then travel with the old guys, and they are saying, "Yeah, we have done this for 30 years." So they are coming with requirements that we need to. Some of them even get into our business and the offices because we have a sustainability program globally and with productivity enhancement in place. So yes, the younger generation really demands that we're doing something.
Yvonne, do you want to?
Yes and no. So I think it is really personal. I think we have all types of people, and so I do believe there is a difference, but it's not about, you know, age or how long are you there. It's really how you also personally deal with that. And you're right. It's also, we have a lot of our partners are asking us, what are you doing? So a lot of employees are asking. So I think it's coming from different sides, but I wouldn't say that only the youngers for us are requesting it. They definitely do, but for us it's also really, I think from a leadership perspective, also embedded, or they want to embed it in the culture and in the DNA. Of course we have people, you know, with all things. We have the old school people who say, no, I'm not interested. Let me just fly business class and whatever, I don't care. But I wouldn't say there is some structure to the madness. It's all over the place, I would say, in a positive way. The awareness is there, I have to say. Yeah.
Yeah, and going back about 20 minutes ago, you said you're seeing demand within your business, Marita. People are coming to you to ask what they can do. Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up there. I don't know if you're hanging around for 5 or 10 minutes for people to talk to you, if you're available. And so, yeah, I'll just say a huge thanks to Ruth, David, Marita, and Yvonne, and look forward to seeing you at a session again later today.
I'm super interested in what travel policies people have, you know,
A
like,
lot of people don't have like
a sustainability policy.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome, thank you. It's a huge debate.
From Australia where rail is
Oh gosh,
100%.
Yeah.